Hello, everyone. Finally, I'm so sorry about that delay, but we're all here and we're ready to get moving. First of all, I'd like to say a Ramadan Kareem to you all and a warm virtual welcome. My name is Nada Salha. I am a member of the KHDA team and I'm joined today by my colleagues Magnus and Maya. So it's day 2 of week 7 of distance learning. Teachers' homes have been transformed into virtual classrooms and students all over Dubai are studying and learning from their dining table at home. A lot of effort is being put in by our awesome teachers, a lot of time and a lot more planning we know goes into distance learning provision. And it can be quite daunting and overwhelming. I'd like to start off by expressing heartfelt thanks to each one of you for being absolute superstars in all of this and for transforming the way you teach in such a short period of time and ensuring that learning continues even during a pandemic. So today we're going to be using Mentimeter as part of our webinar. So I'll just share my screen. And if you could please log on to Mentimeter, preferably using a second device, and enter the code 467189. And you'll see the first question up there for today. I'd like to invite you to answer this question. How are you feeling? Seems like a simple question, but I'd be very, very open to hearing how you feel today. You know, asking this question before COVID-19, it was more of a transactional question, I guess. We'd usually hear responses such as, I'm great, or I'm busy, or I'm good, or I'm fine. But now I guess this question is more authentic and people like myself really want to know how you are feeling. And I think a lot of us are not afraid to share our true feelings anymore. And as we can see on the screen, got stressed, tired, overwhelmed. Just take a moment and acknowledge these feelings. They're real. And we're going through unexpected and intense change. So these feelings are all worthy as we try to balance our work and home life and our health. So tired, stressed, overwhelmed are words that are coming up quite a bit. Frustrated, anxious. And we're talking about today. So imagine 7 weeks ago when all of this started, you would have seen a lot more negative emotions in there. But I can also see positive emotions. I can see relaxed, great. I can see optimistic, hopeful, enthusiastic, excited, supported. Alhamdulillah, thank God for everything. Feeling a sense of gratitude, adaptability, joyful, enthusiastic, thankful. Well, I personally have good days and not so good days. And as a parent, I've had a lot of negative emotions in week 1. I was confused and overwhelmed. And now, although it is still hard sometimes, I do feel that I'm coping better and do have moments of hope, as we can see on the screen, resilience. Although I could definitely work on my self-regulation sometimes. So just take a moment, look at that word cloud, reflect as it's developing, and reflect on how we are feeling as a collective group. So we've had over 200 people register for today's session, and I can see there's almost 170 words up there in the word cloud. So thank you so much for doing that, everybody. Really appreciate your honesty there. Okay, so welcome to What Works X. This is a new platform, but let me rewind back to 2012. A movement known as What Works began and would come to change the culture of education in Dubai. It was a series of events that was anchored in a strength-based approach and was focused on collaboration. So What Works X is the same concept, it's just the platform has changed to using a digital platform such as Microsoft Teams. Today's session is on how to support the well-being of teachers during distance learning. Distance learning is a new experience for all of us, for our teachers, our principals, parents and students. And we've gathered evidence from you to understand where you are and how you're finding the experience of distance learning. And you've told us that you want to learn more about the well-being, or more about how to support the well-being of teachers during distance learning. And this is what this 1 hour session is going to be about. So we're going to start off with a 20-minute presentation by our senior leaders from Victory Heights, Paul and Lora, and then a Q&A session which will include some questions previously submitted by you, our awesome participants. And as much as we'd love to hear your voices today, your mics have been muted because, as I mentioned earlier, we have almost 200 people that have joined us today. However, please do ask questions throughout the presentation by submitting them in the chat feature to the right of your screen, and please ensure that your questions are on topic. The Q&A discussion today will be facilitated by my KHDA colleague, Magnus Lindström, who I will now introduce to you. I'll just get him up on the screen. Hello, Magnus. You might want to unmute.
Sorry, hello Nada. Thank you for that introduction. Okie dokie, let's kick this off. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters, Lora Dowlman and Paul Dowman. Lora Dowlman is a highly experienced head teacher, and Paul Dowlman is a highly experienced assistant head teacher, teaching and learning. They are both from the Victory Heights Primary School here in Dubai. Lora and Paul have been kind enough to put together a presentation for us, which responds to the theme of supporting teacher well-being during distance learning. Understanding that there are multiple factors that contribute to teacher well-being, it is an important first step in creating more comprehensive approaches for supporting teacher well-being. From a school perspective, teacher well-being is an important factor in quality, performance, and productivity. Well-being is strongly related to work stress. Poor teacher well-being will have a knock-on effect for student education. Many teachers can, during these extraordinary times, feel overworked, underappreciated, and stressed. Many teachers' work-life balance is non-existent. Their relationships outside of work are suffering, and their passion for their profession could be waning. It has therefore never been more important to focus on and ensuring the well-being of teaching staff. Efforts to develop and maintain strong social connections are more crucial now than ever, particularly in times when we are likely to experience less social interactions than usual. A teacher with job satisfaction, positive morale, and who is healthy should be more likely to teach lessons which are creative, challenging, and effective. So, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to hand over the word to Lora and Paul from Victory Heights Primary School for their presentation.
Okay. Hello there. Hi, I hope you can all see me. Hi, I am Lora Dowlman, head teacher at Victory Heights Primary School. Ramadan Kareem to everybody. It's good to see you all here out there. Yes, sorry about the few technical problems. My husband, Paul Dowman, is assistant head at Victory Heights Primary School. And yes, we are husband and wife, and we work together in the same school, and now we also work together in the same house. So yes, well-being has been crucial to our family for sure. So Victory Heights Primary School is a primary school based in Sports City in Dubai. It has 35 classes. We have currently about 750 children currently engaged in online learning. And yes, it's been a busy time. We've always considered ourselves to be a school that has well-being and happiness at the heart of our school. Let me just share this presentation. I think everyone can see this. I think everyone can see. Great. Yeah, we've always had well-being and happiness at the heart of our school, and supporting our staff and our students and our families is absolutely crucial. And times like this is very, very challenging for everybody, and I think we absolutely need to acknowledge that. These are very difficult, very challenging, and very unprecedented times, and the struggle is very, very real for all people, for all teachers, for our classroom assistants, for our admin, for head teachers, for assistant head teachers, and we think we absolutely have to acknowledge that there are people in our community who are suffering with anxiety or fear or bereavement. They have worries, whether it's about or loneliness. But it was also wonderful to see in the word cloud today that there were also many elements of strength and excitement and positivity there, because we have been on a journey over the last 7 weeks, and it's good to feel that you're feeling stronger too. And I'm sure that many of your schools have done a lot to support you over the last few weeks, and hopefully today you'll come away with a few takeaways of some ideas that maybe you could use in your school. But I think it's really important to also realise that these are things that have worked for Victory Heights Primary School, for where we are and our community, and there may be elements that may be different for you. Maybe you have a much bigger school or maybe a smaller school. So you need to take away and see what you can do with what would work with you. Now, when we talk about well-being, there are already so many different models to well-being, whether you're looking at physical or social or emotional elements. And so many of these different models, they all say the same thing. They're all about looking after yourselves, and they all have these different areas that all connect in together. And there are so many of these areas that we look after and take care of. And we have to look after our social and our mental well-being, and make sure that we're exercising and we're putting the right food into our bodies, and that we're connecting with friends or family around the world and in Dubai. But we also absolutely crucially need to acknowledge that at times like this, some of these things may be completely out of your hands. But you absolutely also need to make sure that you're looking after yourself first. Very much like the oxygen masks on aeroplanes. You have to look after yourself first, and then you'll be able to take care of people around you, particularly your students and the staff there that you work with. So I believe we've had a few technical problems, so I'm hoping Paul might be nearby.
Okay, can everybody see me?
Yes, they can.
Okay, right. Ramadan Kareem, everybody. I just want to stress again that, you know, this is our context. We are a primary school, and, you know, the strategies that we are going to share this afternoon are, you know, strategies that we use with the tools that are available to us, and, you know, the experiences of members of staff, you know, that we've had as part of our teaching community. I'm going to say to you now that this hasn't been all rosy. It hasn't all been successes. For the successes that we've had equal amounts of failure. But you know, we are a resilient bunch of teachers, and we do adapt and we do change. So how do we know? How do we know as a senior leadership team how our teachers are feeling? So we took the idea of putting together a staff survey after the end of week 2 of online learning. We just wanted to get a real picture, an honest picture of how our staff, our teachers were feeling. And we got some very, very useful data. We have been reflecting, and we do realise that because this whole experience of online learning, as it's continuing, we need to repeat the process. But we got some very, very detailed data from it. So we put together the staff survey, and we put together some areas, some questions. We organised it in terms of health. We wanted to find out what our teachers and our staff felt about the anxiety of how they were feeling in terms of the situation. We also wanted to find out about how they were feeling about online learning itself, how they were coping with that. We also wanted to find out in terms of how connected they felt with their family, with their friends, if they had friendship connections. And also, on a positive note, we wanted to find out what type of things that they had done within those 2 weeks that had lifted in a positive way and impacted their well-being. So it was really useful, really rich data. Could we have the next slide, please, Laura? So I don't know if you can see it. I think we are going to be sharing this presentation afterwards, but that's kind of how the survey looked. We did it on a scale of 1 to 5. I'll pick an example. On a scale of 1 to 5, how manageable is your workload? And we got overwhelming or down to comfortable. So lots of questions structured around. We had a rich amount of data from that. Can we have the next slide, please? So what do we do with that data? So we had a rough idea of how our teachers were feeling, and we did a lot of listening as a team. Now, we pride ourselves on our senior leadership team that, you know, amongst us all, we do have a good feeling, and we do have a good understanding of the teachers who are on our team. So we did a lot of one-to-one meetings. We organised a member of SLT to look after a particular area of the teaching team. For example, I took care of Key Stage 1, Lora was looking after Key Stage 2. We had our assistant head, our other assistant head, who's also head of innovation. He was looking after the specialists, and of course we had our EYFS coordinator who was looking after the foundation stage. And we set up a series of one-to-one meetings where we just gave teachers time to talk about some of those anxieties and some of those issues and frustrations that they were feeling. And, you know, we triangulated that from what we had from our survey. So we know our team. As a senior leadership team, we know that not one size fits all. We're aware that we have teachers on our team who might be living on their own, who might be single. We might have families, you know, teachers with a huge amount of families, and maybe job security of partners might be an issue. So all those bring a whole big complexity of issues that really we just need to listen to. It's important as well to acknowledge to the teachers that we don't always have the answers, and we can't always be practical. But what we can do is we can listen. You know, we can help teachers, you know, understand that, yeah, welcome those feelings of anxiety and frustration, just acknowledge they're there, and that can often be very useful as part of moving on. And, you know, we're constantly changing and checking in with those regularly. For example, as part of our team, we might have one member of staff who's living on their own. We reach out to those individuals more often, and also we try to connect them with their friendship groups around, just to check that they're checking in as well, making sure that they're connecting and supporting. You know, we do have the teachers who have lots of families, lots of children, along with they're trying to do their online learning. They have to be looking after their own children. And some of our SLT team, some of our management team, they've actually offered to take over Seesaw accounts just to support and give those teachers a bit of time as well. Next slide, please.
Good. Sorry, go that way.
It's okay. So, you know, it's a human thing. Community, belonging to one's tribe, and we've got a vibrant, a strong community at Victory Heights Primary School, and we've tried very, very hard in ensuring that that's, you know, fundamentally important, that we are supporting the teachers within their community, and you know, showing teachers that and parents that they're you know, valuable members of that community. Now, I know it seems strange that the first bullet point says parents consultation meetings, You might be thinking that might be on the opposite side of teacher wellbeing, but actually it was quite timely. It came at a really, really good time when all our teachers were really hearing were quite negative responses to the online learning that we put in place. You know, those parents, those families who were struggling, they would obviously reach out to the teacher. But in those parent consultation meetings, they were so positive. And, you know, the majority of our teachers felt really lifted, really motivated after those parental consultations because of the positive praise that those parents were giving, and just that, you know, that human connection as well. That was a big lift at that point of the year. We hold lots of meetings, some year group meetings, and also as a staff together. And when we're dealing with difficult issues, we try to be as transparent as possible, and I think that fosters trust. And I think that whole trust helps to lift the motivation and the well-being of our teachers as well. We have individual and team awards. We do Hero of the Day. So that could be an individual, but that could also be a team of teachers. And we broadcast that out on our social media to our parents to make sure that they're aware of the amazing things that our teachers are doing. A lot of praise. And another thing that we do, trying to make it as you know, as real as possible when we were back in the real world, we have organised on the Google Calendar a virtual staff room that opens at the beginning of our workday and closes at the end of the workday. And it's basically a Zoom link that teachers can go, and they can go into that staff room and basically just informal chats, you know, see people that they don't normally see, perhaps as part of their team, who they had friendship connections with when we were back in the real world, back in school. And our head of innovation, Mr. Ben Rothwell, has been fantastic at putting together some live events that have been held after school and that have been held during school, along with some of the innovative ideas of other members of our staff. But we had the great Victory Heights Primary School climb, where teachers tried to summit Everest, and in doing so were climbing to the top of many of the world's famous mountains. I believe, Laura, I see your picture there. I think you were one of our heroes there.
Yep, I did. I climbed 2,904 flights of our stairs in our house, and 58,070 steps, which made Everest, apparently.
Absolutely fantastic. What a challenge. We've got the Masked Singer that we do. We upload some songs. It's a bit like the X Factor, really, but you've got a mask on your face. Nobody knows who it is. Well, they do know who it is, really. They can tell by your voice. But it's kind of like an X Factor idea, and teachers get involved, the parents get involved by voting, and that's been really, really successful. We have our VHPS virtual iftar, which has just started, and that's been really successful, brings that community together. We used to hold iftar events, and it's great to see that happening as well. We have quizzes, and we have bingo, and of course I've just mentioned our online hero of the day. But I will say, before I move on, all of this can actually sometimes play a negative part on some teachers who just at the end of the day, just at the end of the week, just want to have a little bit of me time, and they might feel pressurized to join some of these community events. And we've said from the start, it's absolutely okay if you don't want to join, you know, and you just want to have some me time, because that's valuable as well. And I think we've got a menti.com poll. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read a question, and then it's going to be over to you guys to obviously vote on one of the options below. So have a think of this. Over the last week, which of the following statements best describes how you feel about online learning, distance learning? And we've got some options at the bottom there. can't actually read them at the moment. I'm managing well, although a challenge, yeah. I have good days and bad days. It's interesting reflecting as an SLT in our meetings how the week is a bit like a roller coaster. You know, you can sometimes start off and it's a very positive week, and then it dips in the middle, or you might start off on a Sunday and it's a stressful time. But that roller coaster effect is definitely something that us as an SLT and teachers have said as part of their week. Good to see that that many of you are managing well. And it's interesting, it does reflect quite closely our survey of our teachers.
I think it's very positive to feel that people have the resources around them and to help them, and again, taking each day at a time. Okay, we'll move back to the presentation. I think there's a few final results, but I think overwhelmingly you can see that many people feel that they're managing well and they have the resources around them, and I think over time that's definitely improved. I know it's happened a lot in our school. We've got better over time. I think these surveys at the beginning would have maybe shown a very different picture. Also, it's okay to recognise that, yeah, maybe you are struggling and that you will have bad days, and yeah, and that perhaps you need a bit more support. But also wonderful as well to see that the schools are there supporting us, 12 there that have supportive schools. So I'll just reshare where we are. Okay. So as a head teacher, as a member of SLT, looking at teacher wellbeing certainly involves looking at workload and making sure that our teachers are managing their workload, and we're doing all that we can to support them. So whether you're watching as a member of SLT or as a teacher, these are some of the things that we worked on ourselves to help us. We made sure at the beginning that the platforms that we were going to use for online learning were platforms that our teachers were already familiar with. We use Seesaw, as Paul mentioned, but we also use Google Classroom, and those two platforms were very, very familiar to our teachers. And I know that there are many companies out there, and particularly at the beginning, many companies offering free services and free resources. And I do think it's very, very careful not to overload yourselves with reaching out to so many different things. I know certainly our children will become overwhelmed, and our families, but as teachers, be careful, think carefully about which platforms you want to use and don't overwhelm. We have the acronym KISS, and that means keep it simple. Something we've always used in our school. Just keep it simple, don't overcomplicate it, and I think that's absolutely crucial during distance and home learning. Making sure we made sure our timetables were very reduced, that they really concentrated on the core subjects, not as busy as they certainly are when we're in the physical school, but making sure that the core subjects are being covered, which often also would there feed into assessments that our teachers on a normal day in the classroom, when they're physically in the building, they would try and hit many objectives over the course of a week or over the course of a lesson. So now when they're planning, they're focusing just on 1 or 2 objectives maximum, so that those lessons are able to be specifically tailored to the children's need, and then they're able to maybe reach judgments against those objectives. And so crucially as well, making sure that there's consistency across the school. You know, it does nobody any good if somebody's shining a light in one area of the school, it's particularly when you're looking, you've got children who've got siblings across the school, and it really does support each other to be consistent. So as a team, sharing the ideas, sharing the resources that you're using, making sure that you're all working together as a school, and supporting each other along this. And I've put here, it's so crucial to make sure you set your own schedules and timetables, making sure that you're managing your time. I think that's something we're only just coming to now as a school, making sure that we're really looking after ourselves. I think at the beginning we ploughed through our timetables, but now, you know, 7 weeks in, that we're making sure that we get a lunch, or we get a break, we get some rest. And then we do make sure, you know, that we switch off at the right time. Zoom overload is certainly something that is very, very real and very true. And I promise you, I didn't used to wear glasses. And in the last few weeks, this is definitely something that I am needing a lot more of. So you have to make sure that you set your own schedules and your timetables, and you look after you, just as you would be saying to your children as well. As leaders, we've tried very hard to be visible, and that's hard when you're in your own house, and to make sure you're being visible to your teachers and your staff and your colleagues. And we'll pop into, in a very non-threatening way, in a supportive way. We'll pop into lessons, we'll pop into meetings to see how can we support, is there anything we can do. We'll help with the feedback on Seesaw and making comments. And as Paul said, cover lessons where it's needed. And we really do try to acknowledge the efforts and praise as much as we can, because goodness me, I am constantly amazed by the incredible work that's being produced out there by our team. And again, we listen, try to make sure that, you know, we listen to ideas, and then when we're moving, and it's not, you know, this is the time to be rigid, this is definitely the time to be flexible. And if something isn't working, to make sure that teachers feel that they're being listened to and they've got autonomy over their lessons, over their classes, to do with what works best for them and the children that they're teaching and looking after. As an SLT, we have tried to protect our teachers from some of the parent worries and parent concerns that they have, so that the teachers are just concentrating on the children in their classes. We've been reaching out to parents. If we know that there's a child that maybe isn't engaged as much as they should be or would be normally, we are reaching out as SLT to those families. What can we do to help? Trying to keep it as much away from our teachers as possible. And certainly reducing meetings. This is something that we're all learning, how much needed to be in a meeting and how much could be really in an email. Reducing meetings as much as possible. And as I said before, keeping to cut-off times, you know, whether that's on email or WhatsApp or anything else that your school is using. It really is crucial to make sure that you're switching off and you're closing that laptop and walking away, and not walking away at 9 o'clock at night, you know, making sure it's a realistic and sensible time. These are just some of our parents actually with our teachers and leadership team. These are parents. We ran some webinars supporting our parents. We had ran a Key Stage 1 and a Key Stage 2 and an Early Years 1, and we invited our parents in. And how this came for wellbeing for our teachers, it was actually really wonderful for our teachers to hear our parents full of praise for what the incredible work our teachers were doing. And it was lovely for them to hear that as well, and that was crucial. We are also very active on our Facebook page, and we aren't afraid sometimes to tell our families and our communities, everyone's going through difficult times, but sometimes you just need to make sure to remember to be kind to each other. And, you know, as we say, we're an extended family, and we'll remind parents how to make sure they're supporting their children, which therefore will support you teachers, and constantly reminding that our children are capable. You know, don't do for your child what they can do for themselves. It's something we've often reminded. And in the end of the day, this is helping our teachers, it's helping their well-being, and supporting them in the background as well. If there are members of SLT or principals or head teachers watching, we have in our SLT, we have daily morning and afternoon meetings, These are just something to, you know, what's coming up in the day, or recapping what's been through and feeding back and sharing and offloading. And these meetings, we've never been a very, very formal team anyway, but these meetings really do base a lot on laughter and having fun and having a good giggle when times are tough, and trying to look for the fun in these things. And networking, I know that our principal has a very, very big network of other principals in Dubai. So make sure, principals or head teachers, that you are reaching out, whether it's on informal WhatsApp groups or emails, formal meetings. It's so important to share, because so many schools, we're all going through this. We are all having the same problems. And how is your school dealing with it? Is there something we could do that we could take from your school as an idea to support our families and our teachers? It's so important to network. And again, events like this, you know, hopefully you've got a few takeaway practical ideas to take out to your school. As I keep saying, you know, this is what works for us at Victory Heights. Obviously, we're just a small primary school. You are maybe a much larger secondary school, but maybe some of these ideas might be something that you can take. But look out for other ideas out there around the world. Globally, there are so many Facebook groups, Twitter groups. I know there's a huge Facebook Global Educator collective. It's huge for sharing ideas and how people all around the world, how teachers and educators are coping right now. And there'll be somebody going through the same problems or same issues or same concerns that you've got right now. And there are local cluster groups. We have some cluster subject groups for our English leads and our maths leads. So maybe ask the school down the road for you, or reach out to us at Victory Heights, and we can help put you in touch with different people. Because I think, you know, I always love the education system for reaching out and supporting each other. And I think times like this is where it's so important. But again, there are times where well-being and teacher well-being is where maybe it's needed more expert support and advice. And something that we really do share with our teachers are the wonderful, wonderful work that Lighthouse Arabia runs. They have lots of free sessions going, but they also do run online counselling sessions for teachers, because sometimes you just need an expert, and sometimes some of these ideas won't help. And it's recognising that it's so crucial to reach out to the experts. And we're nearly there. This is something that's been doing the rounds on social media over the last few weeks. So this is something I feel these 6 points are so crucial. And I think we all need to recognise and remember these when we're having difficult days. That we're not just working from home. You're in your home, in your house, during a crisis, trying very hard to work. And that your physical, mental and emotional health is so important. And you can't judge yourself by how others are coping, and that you have to be kind to yourself, and that maybe, you know, be kind to others, and making sure that how are they coping. It might be very different to you, and their situation might be very different. And we can't, you know, measure our teams the same successes as we do now as we did when we were in the physical building. It's all so different. So be gentle on yourselves. And finally, there's this quote here by Ross McGill from Teacher Toolkit. He wrote an open letter to teachers, and he says, you know, remember this, you're playing your part in history right now, and in years to come, the country will remember the teachers of 2020. So hopefully you've come away with some good tips from today, or some practical ideas. I'll just leave this slide here, Nada, because I do think this is quite crucial. But thank you very much, and I hope that's been helpful. Thank you, Paul, as well.
Thank you so much, Laura and Paul, for that lovely presentation. We are now going to move on to the Q&A bit of this webinar. So we've got a couple of questions and answers to prepare for. In the registration forms that you all filled out prior to this webinar, and many of you have submitted questions that I will pose to Laura and Paul. And I'm also going to have a look at the live questions that are being posted in our chat. I see there's quite a few coming in. But let's kick this off with our first question. First question, I'd like Laura to please answer this one. This talks about home life and work life and finding that balance. Where does home life and work life start and end? How do you help teachers create those boundaries?
Well, goodness me, having being a head teacher in a house with an assistant head working in an office downstairs with a year 4 son working in his bedroom across the corridor. Finding that balance is incredibly difficult, and I definitely think in the first few days we didn't get it right. But we have, as you'll probably recognise, Paul and I are in our separate rooms. This is what works for us, and you have to be really flexible in your own spaces and change your spaces to make sure that it works best for you and your family. And like I said about being gentle to yourself and set schedules, make sure that you're finding time to go and spend time with your children if you have them. Many of our staff have children too, and reach out to your team members. What can they do to help you? Can they change the timetable so that you're able to also support your children, particularly the younger ones? My son's been amazing. He's so independent, and he's cracked on with it by himself. He's been brilliant. But there are particularly the younger children or other children who might need a lot more support. So reach out to your teams is the best things, and there will be somebody in your team who can help you or jiggle your timetables around, because you also crucially have to be a parent too. You know, we're all about looking after the children. That's our jobs.
Thank you, Laura. We're now going to touch upon a question regarding ergonomics, avoiding stress and awkward postures. If I could pose this question to Paul, please. With well-being in mind for teachers, what are your thoughts on these scenarios? Not sitting down for long periods, staring at a screen for 6 to 8 hours, staying hydrated, ensuring sufficient food intake if you're not fasting, getting out of your chair every 60 to 90 minutes to move around. What are your thoughts, please?
Well, I think, you know, it's, I think as a school, we're on the beginning of our journey with that. In terms of, just going back to the survey, you know, that question that we posed that asked what teachers were doing to help their own well-being, I think that was a really good start, because it was a bank of ideas that allowed teachers to just consider other options that they'd never considered before. And I think just that whole collective, you know, oh, that's what that teacher's doing, I like that idea. I think that was quite powerful. But I think, yeah, I think we are at the beginning of our journey with it. I think leaders need to be good role models. I think they need to, you know, set the standards of, you know, if you are Zooming and, you know, you are keeping yourself hydrated, it's good to be showing that, you know, just those subliminal messages that are being passed there. I think it's important because, like I mentioned earlier, we have different teachers with different pressures at home. We have the guys who are living on their own and the teachers with lots of children. It would be good, and I'm just thinking ahead here, it would be good to have a working party of those teachers to actually, you know, put together a document or a poster or a video to just share with our teaching staff, to just say these are some of the options. But yeah, definitely, there's some of the ideas that we could move forward with as a school, and maybe that's a takeaway as well that you could have.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. If I can address the next question to Laura, please. This is regarding competencies and rewards. How do you build competencies among teachers, particularly in these days? Talk to me a bit about possibly continuing professional development, CBD, and training opportunities to increase job satisfaction and confidence, and briefly also touch upon rewards and acknowledgement. How has that changed in today's environment?
Yeah, I think it's crucial that you do really, as I said in my presentation, really recognise and reward teachers for the amazing work that they're doing. It is incredibly hard, and I think really recognising that and celebrating, as we said, we have heroes of the day or heroes of the week, and it's just those small messages, whether they're informally later on, you know, just saying, oh, well done, that was fantastic, I loved what you did today, and that was brilliant, and sharing every time you have a parent email that may not get to that teacher, making sure you're passing that on and sharing the positivity that's out there. I do think CPD, is something that maybe we had to put on the back burner for a little while because we were all seriously learning ourselves with so many different platforms and so many things. And maybe now we're at that level to be able to look more, okay, what else can we do? But as I said, you know, educators are incredible, the amazing community. There is so much out there. And then when you're ready, you can reach out for it. But I definitely think you've got to make sure you find that right balance yourself and reach out when you feel ready. It's not something that can be forced upon, definitely not until you're ready.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. We're now going to touch upon some of the live questions I see here. So if we start with the first one, it's from an anonymous person. It says, is it okay for management to keep holding unscheduled virtual meetings with teachers long after working hours or even weekends when teachers should be resting and preparing for the next week? What are your thoughts regarding that?
Can I answer that one?
Please do, Paul. Yeah.
Hopefully that came out from our presentation, that, you know, we really do value, you know, the time that teachers have after school to regenerate, to, you know, energize themselves, to get back into the online learning. And we have tried as best as we can to minimize those meetings and actually just hold meetings when they are really needed. Yeah, I think holding meetings after school, my personal opinion, I think, you know, maybe that would go against teachers' well-being quite fundamentally. So yes, we've tried to as a senior leadership team to, yeah, cut down on those meetings and just make them specific and make them smart.
Thank you, Paul. We have another question here. It touches, it's as a member of SLT, so that I believe the senior leadership team, who checks in on you, ? I'm a single person and a senior leader who's been dealing with parents every day, and their negativity has had a very draining effect on me. What are your thoughts regarding that?
I think you really do need to recognise, I hope you can hear me, you do need to recognise and support your teachers, SLT. You know, I deal a lot with our parents. Luckily, our parents are very, very supportive. But then, as I mentioned in my presentation, you know, putting up those little reminders on whether you have a school app or a school communication platform, you know, celebrate the successes of your team with your parents and really recognise that the struggle is for teachers as well as the parents, as well as the children, and we are all finding, you know, these times very, very challenging, and making sure that we are, you know, all looking after each other, without a doubt.
Thank you, Laura. We have a question here as well regarding mental health. If a teacher is expressing that they don't feel supported or is struggling with his or her mental health, what help is being offered? How do you role model well-being to your students when you may not be feeling good yourself? Can you possibly talk to us a little bit about mentoring and coaching for teachers? Is that readily available?
Yeah, well, we are very lucky that in our school we do have members of staff who do have coaching experience, and we have deployed those members of staff to certain areas, certain individuals, certain groups who might need that support. Certainly, when we feel it's perhaps just something that's out of our control, we certainly would then be looking to those outside agencies and perhaps suggesting those as a way forward. Encouraging those friendship bonds and connections, I think is so important. I think earlier I mentioned, I don't know if I made the point, but earlier I mentioned that senior leaders were put in charge of key areas of the school, and we had those one-to-one meetings. But you know, there will be members of staff in those teams that I look after or Laura looks after who don't actually feel that comfortable talking to myself or Laura and would prefer to speak to somebody else. And we do encourage that, and we've said that from the offset, that there are members out there, there are people in your community that you can go to for support and help if it's not the person designated to your year group. But yeah, outside agencies would be the next step, I think.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. We've got another question here. It's regarding teachers who are parents as well. What about teachers who are also parents themselves? What are your thoughts on finding that balance between distance teaching with supporting their own children in distance learning? If I can address that to you, Laura, please. Thank you.
Yeah, as I said, my son Leo is in year 4, and supporting him is absolutely crucial. I mean, he's been very independent, but you do need to make sure you find time for children, the children that are in your house, your own children, and making sure that you're looking after them crucially. Whether you can try and rearrange your timetable, as I suggested, or maybe you try and find time before your school day starts and your breaks in between. I think that's absolutely crucial, that you are looking after your own children and trying to reach out to your colleagues. How can they support you and how can they help you with your families? Because your senior leadership team just need to know if you're finding it difficult. And I think that's absolutely key, that you keep people informed with what your own personal circumstances are as well, so that they can support you properly.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for that. Just lastly, if I have the last question here, potentially for Paul, just when it comes to interactions and consultations, you know, please describe sort of the communication that exists between the teachers in your school. Why is that so important, that they continue their connectivity throughout this process?
Yeah, good question. I mean, you know, going back to the one-to-one meetings, those are the consultations that we have one-to-one, and the team meetings that SLT have with teams. I think they're the consultations that we have, and along with the parent consultations as well. But it's important to note that, you know, those teachers are at the chalk face of what they do, so they live and breathe this online learning experience that we don't have, and the impact of those consultations is that we can encourage them to take autonomy in making things work for them as a team, as an individual, and just recognizing how amazing that is, and giving that praise is so powerful for those individual teams. You know, just autonomy. They know the stresses and the frustrations that they have, and they come up with the solutions. But often I think sometimes we built a framework at the beginning of this as an SLT, but it's now up to the teachers to kind of make it their own and know that they have our backing is very important.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Laura, for your very informative answers. We're now going to move on to Nada and her mentee meter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is her mic off?
I think that your mic is off, Nada.
There we go. Okay, I'm sure you can hear me now. So I was just saying thank you, Laura and Paul, for your insights and generosity in sharing how your school is supporting the well-being of teachers. We hope that was useful to you all, or that it has inspired you to think of other solutions to support the well-being of your staff at school. Now, we're going to end shortly, but may I please ask that you just hold on for a few more minutes to answer a couple of questions using menti.com. So if you go back to menti.com, I'll bring it up now. If you've been kicked out of menti.com, just re-log on and enter the code 467189, and you'll find the first question there. Overall, how satisfied were you with the quality of the content of the webinar, the structure, and the presenters and the preparedness in responding to your questions? I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. We had about 200 people on the call today. Really shows that this topic is of crucial importance for all our schools and our educators. And it really shows that lots of people care about this topic, which is fantastic. So thank you to everyone that joined today. Just wait another minute or so until we get a few more responses. So for those that have been joining our webinars, you're familiar now with the menti.com platform. As Magnus alluded to, I am a big fan of this platform, and it's been quite an interesting way of engaging large audiences. So if you wish to use it, please feel free to go ahead. I think it's free or it's at little cost, but it's a great way to engage perhaps students or your teachers, and it's anonymous as well. So staff, students can really engage in an honest and genuine way. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Thank you everyone for responding to that. Okay, I'd love to know what you enjoyed most about the webinar today. So please feel free to enter in a couple of words and share your feedback here. What was it that you enjoyed most about the webinar today? Some great feedback coming through here. It was interesting, informative, honest, realistic. Virtual staff room, the virtual iftar, with some great ideas. Different ideas to support teacher wellbeing. Teachers' issues were discussed and brought out into the open, so there was that safe platform for teachers to come forward with concerns and issues. The Q&A session. Yes, great job, Magnus and team. Very relevant topic. Some people have said we love the ideas of building a virtual community with teachers. The top tips for SLT team. I particularly like the one about SLT being visible to the staff community. It was an eye-opener that there are schools that care for their teachers, exclamation mark. So kudos to Victory Heights. I also would take some tools away, such as mentee.com. So I have another fan. Whoa. There's a good insight for me. Most of the strategies are already being followed in our school staff wellbeing agenda. Hearing how these amazing senior leaders look after their staff. I want to work there. Great sharing on how all of us can work together and learn and support each other during this critical time. Thank you. Using Mentee and seeing other people's feelings and thoughts. Absolutely, you know, you're not alone. This platform really does show that many of us are struggling and that it is okay. And we all are feeling ups and downs at the moment. I liked everything. Thank you. The Q&A session, that's great. Thank you everyone for that fantastic feedback. Okay, I'll just move on to the next question. What will be the first thing you plan to do to improve the well-being of teachers at your school? It might have been some of the ideas that Laura and Paul alluded to, or maybe their presentation has inspired you to think of different ideas. So you have the options of no plans to change, engage teachers in fun and social virtual activities, such as the iftar that they mentioned, check in more regularly with colleagues or teachers, measure staff well-being through regular surveys. request further support from senior leadership team and or governing body or directors of the school, guide and support staff, more in employing practices at home that will promote improved well-being, or you've been inspired to do other things, and we can come to that on the next slide as well. It's great to see that most of you have, or all of you have, taken this information and are willing to employ some action around staff wellbeing at your school. We've also mentioned the measuring staff wellbeing, and I know Paul and Laura have created their own short survey relevant to the times at the moment, but you could also go back to your adults at school wellbeing survey that was conducted back in November last year and the year before, and reflect on those results as well. And thank you to everyone that stayed on the call and are answering these questions. Okay, we'll just move on to the last bit of this webinar. So for those that said other, and for everyone else as well, what other ways do you plan to support teacher wellbeing following this webinar? How have you been inspired by this webinar? Do you have some new ideas that you'd like to share with the group today? And all of these ideas will then be provided to everyone on the call. So definitely greater communication, giving more support to others where needed, even if it's just listening, as Laura mentioned, even if it's just listening. You might not have the answers, but just listening and acknowledging struggles and issues. Surveys, checking in with teachers. And Paul did mention that Victoria Heights is doing surveys every couple of weeks. I think that's a good idea. Things are changing quite a lot, and you know how teachers and parents and students might be feeling back in week 1 will be quite different to how they are feeling in week 7. I plan to put myself first. Absolutely, that's all around self-compassion. Being kind to yourself. The virtual staff room, iftar rewards, positive feedback and recognising staff efforts. I think that might be taking rest and sleeping well. Absolutely, as we've seen with research on well-being, sleep is extremely important. Having deep sleep is crucial to our well-being. Checking in more with colleagues. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. I'm just mindful of the time. Please do keep all of that coming in. And I think you can still respond to those questions as I move to, I think it's my last slide. Okay, so many of you might be familiar with this. This is our In This Together dubai.khda.gov.ae microsite. This is basically a repository of free resources out there basically in the world. A lot of community support has been brought to life, and there are a lot of free resources, webinars, resources on well-being, workload, tech tools. So please feel free to check out that microsite. And finally, I think this has made its rounds on social media, but this is a very beautiful teacher in the US, and I've seen this a couple of times, but every time I see it, it does make me smile a little bit, and I'd like to share it with you. So just a little bit of humor to end today's session. And I'll just go back. So yeah, as I said, just a little bit of humor to end that session. Although the struggle is real and we do recognise and acknowledge it, and we do thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being such awesome, awesome teachers. Thank you to Lora and Paul and Magnus and Maya and Junaid, who's been helping with the IT in the background. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Do take care of yourselves. Look after your well-being as much as you can. And heartfelt thanks from all of us at KHDA. Please do join us for our next webinar on Thursday, which will be around assessment and how do we know kids are progressing in their learning whilst distance learning. So that's the topic coming up on Thursday, and we will be holding these seminars or webinars every Monday and Thursday at 4 o'clock. Keep your eye on the In This Together website for details. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and Ramadan Kareem. Bye-bye.